Recording now.
Excellent.
But I don't know, like we are recording, but how do we like publish it on YouTube, I guess, because that's where other SIGs publish their recordings. I guess we can talk to Sarah about that.
Yeah, that's cool.
Pretty sure I should add. Awesome. So for E2E tests,
Sorry, what did I volunteer for there?
for writing these major headings for this meeting, like
Oh,
what's
sure, I can do that. That isn't actually what I said, but I'm happy.
Oh, okay, sorry, that's what I thought.
Yeah, I mean, my suggestion was just to clarify that you can see there are whatever 9 things on here already, and hopefully we're going to be documenting even more than this. So just breaking it down into a couple of standard sections that we cover each week or each meeting might be useful. I can do that. The other suggestion I had, maybe while we're on the topic of notes, is just this particular document is getting extremely and unmanageably long. So maybe we could do like annual archives or something, so that you only have the last, or quarterly archives, so that you only have the last quarter of stuff in this doc, and we just have a link to the previous quarters somewhere. Otherwise it becomes a bit unmanageable. I can do that too.
Maybe we could get rid of the table of contents. I'm thinking of the example of the community meeting. They just have the latest agendas immediately available, which is mostly what people use anyway, and you can always search for other meetings.
Yeah, I mean, the table of contents has definitely got unmanageable because of the length of it at the moment. But I personally find it quite useful to be able to go back to, a given place. I guess in theory you can search for it, but you're not very consistent with our dates and things. Once I've shrunk it down, we can see if it's still a problem, and if it is, we can remove it or abbreviate it or something like that.
Okay.
Great. For E2E tests, Madhu, do you want to talk about it?
There isn't much to talk about it. The CI tests are green. We are working on pre-submits. We have turned on pre-submits on Kubernetes core. We intentionally did not start reporting on the PRs yet, as in on GitHub PR page, because we did not want to cause unnecessary anxiety among non-Federation developers, because we are still not very confident that these things are green on all the PRs. It is mostly green. I don't know, like we have some GCP project quota issues or whatever. I'm not sure at this point, which is causing some alternating behavior. They are green. Tests are fully green on one day, and the next day they are completely broken. We're trying to figure out what is going on, asking Google Cloud Capacity Planning people to give us more quota, and that's it.
Hey, Madhu, can I actually take a step back and talk about the testing context and some of the other issues that are coming up, both open source and Google related?
As in, I'm not entirely sure about the context of the question.
All right, so there's some other conversations that have been going on. First, like SIG related, did you talk in this meeting about reaching when Eric Feta from SIG testing reached out to us in those conversations? I know I came in a few minutes late.
Okay. So yeah.
If you want, I can talk about it too. Either or is fine, especially because I'm going to be reaching out with him a lot more in the coming weeks.
Okay. So I don't know exactly what you have in mind, but I'm going to cover as much as possible, and maybe you can add everything that I missed, I guess.
Okay.
So like at the beginning of the previous quarter, Q1, we started out with the goal of making our post submits blocking because we thought that's how Kubernetes worked. So today, if you go to submit queue dashboard, you see a bunch of blocking post submit jobs, post submit test suites, and Federation test suite was pretty much completely broken at the beginning of Q1. So we fixed a whole bunch of infrastructure issues, and by the end of Q1, we were in a pretty good shape, actually at the beginning of Q2. So we went to the test infra folks and asked them if we could make the Federation job, the CI job, post-submit job blocking. And they said they did not want to add any more blocking jobs to CI because their goal was to remove all the blocking jobs from the CI blocking list. So the goal is still to remove all these CI jobs and make the pre-submit jobs blocking for all the PRs. So the idea is if we can let a PR in, then that means it should pass all our tests and things should work. So they asked us to go back and make our pre-submit jobs blocking, and we this was about 2 weeks ago, and we started working on making pre-submit jobs blocking. I fixed a bunch of infrastructure issues, worked with Eric Fita, the test infra SIG, and now we have a pre-submit job which is mostly green on alternate. So that's where we are. Ruben, I don't know what I missed, so I'll let you add the details.
So I just want to highlight that there's something bigger going on in Kubernetes right now, and the timing hasn't been great for Federation in this effort here. It sounds to me right now, from talking to a few members of the SIG testing group, that the way Kubernetes is trying to gain confidence in the code and at the same time maintain developer velocity is changing greatly, and that there used to be all these continuous integration suites that you would then, create for your SIG, and it would block the queue when they broke. At this point, I think that they're abandoning that idea or pushing away from that idea. And so the strategy that we had that Madhu just outlined of coming up with a Federation set of tests that would block the queue when they stopped working, it sounds like that may not be an option for us. And instead, focusing on pre-submit tests seems to be the way they want us to go. We may not be able to have it the way we want. Part of having those pre-submit tests, though, means that code.
Sorry to interrupt for a moment, Michael. So, what is the distinction between a CI test, a blocking CI test, and a pre-submit test? I'm missing something somewhere.
Yeah. Let me try to tell you. So, I think that I'm still learning about this too, but I believe that the CI tests are ones where you can have more than one, like basically when you have more than one PR and when you do a PR blocking one, it's basically this one PR. If this PR doesn't work, then that PR is not submitted. The CI test is when you have like the soak tests and the serial tests, and you have basically sort of the integration of many PRs, and they've been running, in the background or with a batch of PRs on the queue. And
so CI tests,
we should come up with
actually to clarify, CI tests are the ones that run post-merge. They're running on head to making sure all the tests pass on head, and pre-merge are before the PR even merges. So obviously pre-merge tests are better. Like even before merging a PR, you find out if it's breaking tests. CI ones, after merging, we run them and make sure that the test pass. So that's why SIG testing wants more pre-merge rather than CI.
You should really come up with a different name then, because CI means continuous integration, which means the things that typically run before.
That's a great idea. And I urge you to go talk to the SIG testing group and have them rename it. I'm fully behind you on that.
Okay, I can do that.
But I think the main point is we don't want to be in a situation where we rely on a human to look at it and care about it and triage it. We want a situation where we have a pre-merge block apply to every PR that is independently tested.
But even if we have the pre, it looks like what's going to happen is that we are still going to need in this SIG somebody like a build cop who's going to notice things that occur after, let's say, soak testing, or issues that have come up that are more subtle that possibly break the tests in head after that.
Yeah, I was going to say the same. We are trying to add like pre-merge blocking, but that would only be our main CI parallel. sorry, the suite in which we run tests parallelly, which has most of the tests, but we have other test suites as well, like serial tests or soak tests, which take a lot of time to run. So we can't make them PR blocking, because then like if for soak tests, by definition, they have to run for multiple days. We can't expect PRs to be blocked waiting for soak tests to pass on that PR. So we always have tests which we cannot have PR blocking. So we would need a manual to look at them. They'll be running on head always, and we need a build cop to look at them.
And this leads to two points, and then I just I'll mute. One of them is that we're probably going to have to come up with some sort of build cop system to allow us to triage when these events occur. And then B, these build cops today, right now, talking to the SIG testing folks, they need to be Googlers, because Googlers are the only ones with the possible permissions or abilities to interact with these systems or the environment that some of these tests are running in. And I'm trying to work on that, because I think that is A, not cool, and B, not scalable. It's not cool in the community sense. We shouldn't have anything that relies on only Googlers being able to maintain it, especially for open source. I mean, with the open source world. And so I think these are two open issues now that we have to look at. I do think we need probably a build cop rotation, though, to start looking. Once the PR submits are on, we're going to need a build cop rotation in the SIG, or I'm suggesting that we do, because there's going to be things that the PR submits won't capture that will end up breaking the work that we're doing. And those are the points that I'm trying to make. What's more interesting is that it seems like the world of the way that we maintain confidence in the code isn't scaling in Kubernetes. And then these are some of the suggestions. Some of them actually, I think, have been agreed upon decisions in SIG testing that I wasn't aware of. And I know other people in Kubernetes weren't aware of either. So I'm sort of bringing them up in this forum. And Eric also said that he's willing to come to this meeting and talk to us about this in detail.
I would love to have him do that, because everything you described has always been the case. We've always had a subset of CI, what I will call CI tests, which are automatically run tests, which need to pass before a PR gets merged. And then we've always had another subset of tests, like the ones that Nikhil mentioned, soak tests, disruptive tests, etc., which run outside of the pre-submit. And so that is not new and has been like that for many years now.
Right, but I think the last part, Quentin, is the part that is changing. I think the first part is staying the same. I think the last part of being able to add. So do those second systems, do they block the queue when they stop working?
No, they don't.
Yes, they do. If you go to submit queue dashboard, you see a bunch of test suites called blocking post submits or blocking CI or whatever they are called.
Queue blocking builds.
Sorry, queue blocking builds. Yes. Yeah, probably Nikhil, you could share. No, okay, you're already sharing it.
So earlier we had all these. Sorry,
but I'm referring to the ones, all the ones below that, non-queue blocking builds.
Yes, our goal was to move the Federation test, which was in the second block there, to the first block. And what SIG testing folks said was they're removing the first block entirely, and that is what is changing. And with that, there are a bunch of other things changing, I guess.
Okay, that makes perfect sense. I mean, I guess we never really had that middle block, and I agree that it should be empty. Yeah, okay.
So now if it won't be merged, or it won't block the merge queue, then we'll need a human to look at it. Like if it will break, we won't know that it's broken, and more PRs will keep on getting merged, and like the test can even grow, it can regress even more. So that's why we want someone to look at the test grid, and we can have like alert set up that it breaks, someone gets an email, and who looks at it.
Hold on a second. Hold on. There's a third block of tests here that is not on the screen right now, right? So that's the pre-submit tests. Those are the tests that run before every PR.
Yes.
Right, and we agree that those are the. Sorry, then we all think that those are the ones that Madhu's trying right now to enable and have part of the system. In fact, they're enabled on, but they're not blocking the pre-submit of the code.
So that will catch the majority of regressions and prevent those regressions from merging, right?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
They don't block the entire queue, but they prevent the PR from going in.
Exactly.
And everything else will be in the second block on the page at the moment, the non-queue blocking builds, which we need to monitor, but which should almost never break.
I don't think the word almost never. I think that is what we'll find out as we go. I don't believe almost never, but I think that at least once a week, or we'll probably, my bet is at least once a week something's going to pop there. But if not, we'll find out, right? And hopefully they don't.
Do we have a rough idea of what will be in that third category of tests, the non-queue blocking builds, done as the pre-submit?
Right now, they're identical as far as I know. The numbers we got from Theta was most other of these suites to be able to graduate to queue blocking had to be around 95% pass rate. And I think we were in the low 90s after running for a week or so.
I thought there was going to be more soak testing or more integration work in the non-queue blocking tests, Madhu, that these were things that would be running for a longer period of time.
Yeah, we do have serial tests and soak tests both, which we can't make merge blocking.
So I don't know if it's the tests that are different so much as the duration of them.
Like it depends. Like there are different suites which do different things. For example, if you take the soak test suite, the tests are the same, and then if you go to the serial suite, there are different set of tests which just take longer. So like there are both.
So here in the test grid, the GC one, this is the one we can make merge blocking, but GC serial and soak GC test, these two especially take a lot of time, so we won't be able to make them merge blocking.
Okay, but GCE serial seems to be redundant. I can't see that we need to run the same set of tests in serial as we're already running in parallel as merge.
No, these are actually different test cases. So these are like replica set,
okay,
distribution of
okay,
replica set tests.
Okay. Yeah. Okay, and soak tests clearly, yeah, they take a week or so to run. So, okay, cool. I understand better now. Thank you. Sorry about holding up the works.
What are the serial tests doing differently?
Wait, one thing, Quentin, please don't apologize. This stuff, even for all of us who sit right next to each other and are talking to the Google people, this is confusing, and it led to a lot of back and forth. So I'm really happy that we're getting broad agreement on what the heck is going on in this meeting. Please ask questions and make sure they understand this. And especially, if we don't understand what's going on, because it's possible we're missing stuff.
Yeah, I should probably start going to the testing proposals anyway for reasons outside of Federation. So I can sign up for that. And
yeah, I'm going to start doing that too, Quentin. And if you want to start comparing notes, I'd love that. Especially, I'm ramping up on this. I think it's going to become I think the scaling of testing in Kubernetes is becoming a more urgent issue.
Yeah, just FYI, this is not directly related to this SIG, but we have a proposal into the CNCF to build cross-CNCF project testing environment that will be sort of hosted by the CNCF and will facilitate things like testing, Prometheus against various different versions of Kubernetes on different cloud environments, etc. So there's some overlap with that as well.
Cool. And storage is doing the same sort of thing too with different storage interfaces. So yeah, it seems like Kubernetes is maturing, and this is the hot topic in a lot of places. This sounds great.
Okay, cool.
So to clarify, everyone agrees that we need a build corp. The next step would be who all would be on the build corp. Like, do we start with the owner's file? Do we get volunteers?
Isn't it clear that it has to be Googlers until we get access to the internal?
So this is something actually I was discussing with Christian as well. Whenever a test breaks, there are like two main reasons why it breaks. One is like we ran out of quota issue, or there's something wrong in the test infra. Like we need to go in the project and run some command. For that, we need Googlers. But the other test breakage is someone merged a code, and because of that, there's a regression, and that's why our tests are broken. And for the second one, we can have non-Googlers also, because logs are still accessible. So non-Googlers can still go on the test grid, see it broke. They can look at the logs, figure out this is the culprit PR, and just revert it. And even for quota issues, they can look at the logs, find out, oh, it is because of quota. And if they can ping any one of the Googlers that, hey, can you run this command? That also works. But at least like there is the build cop who finds out what is the problem and like what's the solution.
I think it makes sense too to start with a build cop. Start this with the community and have the build cop rotation include Googlers and non-Googlers, so that when it ends up being a quota issue, then the build cop, if it's a non-Googler, just kicks a Googler, and then we can look into it. But just like I think that was Nikhil who said that earlier, for the cases that aren't, they can address them.
Yeah. Like for every primary non-Googler, we can have a secondary Googler. Yeah.
So I've got a proposal to kick this off, which is that we have one preferably non-Googler as the primary build cop. There's a approximately once a week exercise that you kind of come back to this group approximately once a week, and you make sure that everything is unblocked, or at least you have action items to get the stuff working. And we have that rotation, so you're on for about a quarter. The reason I suggest that is because then that person, a bit like Madhu, has been the kind of point guy for Q1, and maybe somebody else wants to do Q2. If you have a single person for a quarter, then at least you get some kind of consistent progress, and they can fix systematic issues rather than just reactively dealing with individual particular items, because some of these things are systemic rather than one-off fixes.
Okay, what do you mean by once a week versus once a quarter?
Well, I mean, this is not like a 24/7 cop rotation. We have to wake up in the middle of the night if the soak tests break. And you also don't need to get someone to stand in for you if you go to lunch. But you do, during the course of the week when something goes wrong, or ideally quicker than that, you do need to, do something about it. And certainly if you're going to be on vacation for a week, you need to get someone else to do your job for the week away. That's what I mean. Sorry, I wasn't very clear about that.
I think the idea is, especially right now, is the test infra is still not necessarily, like, we haven't done a build cop for a while, so we don't know what sorts of issues are going to come up. Having one person do it for a long time means that person can deal with longer term systemic issues and have a higher, more comprehensive understanding of those. And so then over the course of a quarter can be better equipped to figure out how to fix them. Whereas if you're rotating every week, you have to do the log, this sort of like continued ability to look at it might get lost over the course of the quarter. And so it will be harder to figure out and define systemic issues that you could fix rather than just patches on top.
But I think a quarter is too long. Like someone would then, for a quarter, he's only dedicated to the build cop job. I was expecting more like 2 weeks.
I guess
for a week. Yeah.
I guess the question is whether maybe what you're describing isn't exactly a build cop, but like some other role, which is like a test infrastructure, like taking over what Madhu was doing, like a test infrastructure overseer, somebody who is not necessarily who's trying to see things about the test infrastructure that are systemic. It makes sense, but I don't know if build cop is the right.
I'm also hoping that once our tests are green and stable and we have a build cop, these systemic issues would be a lot less as well. And like everyone would contribute. And even the build cop, like he'll start, maybe he finds out some issue and he starts, and then after 2 weeks or whatever his duration is, he passes on to the next one, and next one is able to take it forward. Like I don't want one person and like everyone just saying that he's the guy to fix everything in our test infra. Like it should feel like a shared responsibility.
Well, yeah, I mean, I can see that. I think it's an argument maybe worth having later, because I see good points on both sides.
Well,
not to have somebody be stuck.
Yeah.
It's also good to have somebody who, especially now when unless we're very confident that these issues are gone, doing this temporarily does seem like it would be useful to me.
There's two responsibilities here. One is kind of looking at the long-term health test-wise of Federation, and the other is basically fixing day-to-day, like acute versus chronic, like problems, or however you want to call it. I don't necessarily think those need to be the same people. I think that like having continuity for the long-term view is a good idea.
Mhm.
And then having as many people as possible rotate through the build composition. Like if you're an active contributor, you probably have a responsibility to see, you know, what actually goes wrong so you can help fix it when it inevitably happens. Does that make sense?
I think that makes a lot of sense in theory. I think in practice right now, you know, what actually fails is a test. So the you know, this daily build cop guy is going to see broken tests, and then he's going to spend some time diagnosing, and then he's going to get to the fact that, oh, it's a systemic problem because we, you know, run out of quota, or we don't build clusters properly, or whatever, and that causes these tests to fail. Then he has to hand over all that state to somebody else, whose job is to fix those things. And I'm just, I think in theory, once we get those two much better separated, when a test fails, it's almost exclusively due to the fact that that some PR has gone in that shouldn't have gone in, that caused the test to fail, some systemic, some problem with the Kubernetes Federation system is the cause of it. Then what you say makes perfect sense. But I think we're quite a long way off from that, is my sense, and therefore merging those two roles might make sense, in the sense that if the tests are failing, then it's this person's responsibility, or maybe this team of people, maybe it's 2 or 3 people at a time, and their job is make the tests green, and that's probably. And the other thing to comment is that sometimes the have systemic problems are actually due to code that we have, for example, tests that are not properly written. And then who has to go and fix those? It's difficult to tease all these pieces apart today. I think ideally they would be teased apart in the future, but they are not at the moment.
I think that's a pessimistic view. I think what we worked on first quarter, beginning of second quarter, if you look at, I mean, the case in point is kind of CI. CI represents probably the worst case scenario in running all these tests in parallel. We just have to translate that infrastructure, what happens in that CI, into the blocking tests. And that's what Madhu's been working on, and we're almost there. So the build cop, once we start the rotation, which should be soon, should be looking at very minimal test infra quota related issues. I think we're almost there.
Yeah, and I don't want the build cop rotation guide to be like the scapegoat for every test related, like even refactoring badly written tests. That shouldn't, the build cop should not be required to do that. It should be like the author who wrote that, and like others should chime in to fix all of those things. We can't say that like this is the build cop and for a quarter he's fixing everything test related for Federation.
I think that sort of parallels. I mean, I was the test lead for the 1.6 release team, and basically I was just on point to, you know, when things happen, to try to coordinate a fix, but it wasn't my responsibility to actually do it.
Yeah.
I think that the same should be true.
Yeah, so the build cop should find the issue and then like file an issue and make sure someone is assigned to it and someone is working. He himself doesn't necessarily have to do all the fixes.
And I'll just say it is a skill, at least knowing where to look in that pile of logs. And it's somebody that everybody who's an active contributor should know how to do. You know, finding a failure, at least for me initially, was a matter of like half an hour to now it's probably down to a couple of seconds when you know where and how to search the logs.
And once we've all done that, it also, when we are writing the code, like now it's my mind that I have to debug it. So I write the logs that way that I'm going to read them.
Also, I think we should take a page out of Google's SRE book and probably put this in the build cop rotation responsibility somewhere, that the build cops who are there for a week as a build cop or 2 weeks, they should work on, like, I don't think they'll be spending their entire time looking at the CI dashboard or the PR dashboard and fixing things. These things shouldn't happen that often. So it's probably also responsibility to leave the system in a better state, as in like build a tool to identify systemic issues like quickly, or build a tool to fix systemic issues quickly, or something like that. Like just pass on the system in a better state to the next person.
That kind of seems like a tall order to me. Like, don't get me wrong, I think that being proactive, is great, but I don't know that we necessarily have everybody on the Federation team that's like, yes, I have all the free time in the world. My employers aren't asking me to do non-test work.
No. This is part of the build corp responsibility. Like, if you're signing up for this responsibility.
Oh, okay. So you have, okay, fair enough.
Yeah, people should be able to convince their employers to sign up for this, right? And then this is the responsibility that comes with the rotation.
I guess, like, I'm all for all things testing. I would be concerned that would be sort of a disincentive for people stepping up to participate if we make it more work than it absolutely has to be. Like, great if people were to step up and do that, don't get me wrong, but making it a requirement might be a bit too much.
Yeah, I agree with you. But I'm just wondering, we're kind of running out of time here. Should we either have a separate discussion about this outside of this particular meeting? Or should we agree that we're going to start off with 2 rotations, one quarterly, which is the long-term fixed guy, and one every is the make sure the tests stay green. Is that sort of approximately at least the first milestone that we've agreed on as being good, and then we can refine it further with separate discussions?
Yeah. So I'd sent an email on the SIG Federation, like, first proposing this, and I can reply to that with these 2 conclusions, and people can reply, how do we want to start? Like, who are the volunteers, or what's the list we start with?
Quentin, do you have bandwidth to participate in these off-meeting conversations about this, or?
Very limited, but if it's important, I can.
Okay. So, well, we may rope you in if needed, just because you have so much context in this area.
Sure.
Thank you. So yeah, maybe we should move on now.
All right. Next is integration tests.
I guess this is probably something I should have been there for last time. Integration tests, initial integration tests have merged. So the secret controller is now being validated in integration tests. I'll post a link, or so I'll post instructions on this doc in a sec as to how to run them. Jonathan's working on getting config maps. Christian's agreed to get daemon sets working. And so as part of the work to sort of move those resources over to the new sort of generic sync controller, they'll automatically get integration tests. There's a type adapter registry that just merged. That basically means you implement a type adapter for like a type like config maps, and it automatically will create a controller and run integration tests. And there's a couple PRs up that will actually enable upgrade and E2E tests in the same mechanism. So basically, you implement the type adapter and you get a controller, and your testing pretty much done for free. Ooh. Obviously, it's very basic, but it's certainly a good starting point.
Super
I
cool.
think one of the important, I think one of the important points too is we can move. There's a fair amount of tests that are done in E2E that are covered by integration, so we'll be able to reduce our E2E load. And given E2E is by nature more brittle, I think it'll help our overall test landscape.
Yeah.
Oh, that's a good point.
Carry on.
To speak to what a concern that I anticipate that Quentin will have is that the intent is not to replace E2E immediately. So like the proposed E2E test, which kind of mirrors the same path that the integration test does, but runs it against a real cluster. It doesn't replace the existing E2E. It's intended to be run in parallel until which time the team has sufficient confidence in the coverage provided that we can start removing older tests or deprecating them.
Yeah, I wouldn't be a big fan in general of not running the end-to-end test because in theory it is covered by integration tests.
Oh, no. The idea is that we're actually going to be running the equivalent end-to-end test.
Okay, maybe I can bridge both of your opinions because
Sure,
I've been in agreement with both of you and in disagreement with both of you at different times. So right now we have 4 variants of CRUD testings, and a lot of that is due to the finalizers, and one's on, off, and nil. And there's really no reason to have those 3 variants in E2E. All 3 of those are covered in integration. And actually, through the integration test, we found a bug that was never found in E2E, just because there's just kind of more action going on in terms of starting and stopping controllers at a speed that's not reflected in E2E. So in this case, my suggestion would be we leave one of the CRUD tests in E2E testing, but we have those 4 variants in integration testing.
And so the proposed E2E test is basically replacing the one that exercises the finalizers. And the reason it's kind of replacing the existing E2E test is because it's generic. Like currently we have, a test for the life cycle of a resource for every single type we federate. And we're still going to run that test, but we're going to run it in a way that is not types, like the test is written to be not type specific. It'll run type specific. It'll just be cheaper to maintain, if that makes sense. So there shouldn't be a loss in coverage. That's certainly my goal. I'm not trying to say, oh, we don't need to run this. We're going to run the life cycle of every single type in E2E. We're going to continue to do that. As Christian says, we're going to stop validating things that actually have nothing to do with actually interacting with the underlying clusters, which is a couple of the cases involving deletion.
Okay, that makes sense. I guess a huge benefit of this is that, if you run, and I heard you mention that you're running these or proposing to run the integration tests in parallel with the end-to-end tests. One other possibility would be to run them before the end-to-end test, much faster. And if they fail, then you don't need to run the E2E test because you have a bug already. And that could save, substantially on the end-to-end testing time, because essentially you wouldn't need to run them unless the integration test passed.
I would be supportive of that. I think the general reason that people don't do that is because maybe I don't know how long the integration tests actually take, like the unit integration job versus E2E. I've seen cases where they would run them in parallel just because maybe the integration test only takes 5 minutes to run, or the job takes 5 minutes to run, but that's 5 minutes you could be attempting to run the E2E tests.
Yeah, I think it depends what your motivation is. If you're trying to save overall time in the happy case, then that makes sense. If you're trying to save resources and not build, large numbers of clusters that aren't going to succeed because the integration test failed. Let's talk about it in the testing focused discussion that we plan to have.
But I agree that's a good first task for the first build cop.
I mean, I think my goal was mainly just for developers. You can now run an integration test to validate your changes. You don't have to spin up clusters and any of that sort of stuff. So that hopefully will help.
Incidentally, this is how the Kubernetes tests work, right from the beginning, is that we had unit tests, integration tests, and end-to-end tests. And you didn't bother running the integration tests unless the unit tests passed, and you didn't bother running the ETE tests unless the integration tests passed. And that, obviously makes things a lot quicker. Your PR gets rejected quicker at lower cost.
I think the spirit of that was lost at some point, because when I looked at the amount of testing that happens in integration for Kubernetes, it's an extremely small percentage of both unit and E2E.
Yeah, makes sense.
Also, I wanted to make one quick point regarding D1 sets. I was discussing it with Christian. We now support rolling updates of D1 sets in Kubernetes, and we need to add that support to Federation as well. And if we do that, since the new adapter does not support extension points yet, maybe we should wait for updating D1 sets to use the adapter.
I think one of the main points is to get it to be able to support extensions. Right?
Yeah, I mean, I would hope that we would be able to sort of coordinate those and get both in this cycle.
So then the question becomes, do we first add that support to adapter and then add rolling update support to D1 sets, or we just add it to D1 sets right now?
Is it sort of the same mechanism behind like the scheduling support for replica sets and daemon sets? Or sorry, deployments? Like scheduling step basically, or is there something else?
So daemon sets doesn't have the scheduling part where you have like preferences or how you want to distribute it, but there is some rollback logic, like when you're rolling update logic and rolling back logic, which is similar to replica set and deployments. Yes.
And,
Well,
and,
to
did,
Oh, sorry, only to deployments. Replica set.
and did deployments already have that support, like in their controller?
No, I don't think so. Do they?
Yeah, deployments do have rollback support, but
Okay.
we do want to update that design as well, and Margin has a open design proposal for that. But we do have support currently.
That works. Okay. Okay. I mean, my hope would be it could be something that could be done in parallel, provided there's sort of an understanding of how to separate the rolling update from the rest of the update.
So without looking at code, I don't know how much work would that be to add these extension points and move that rolling update logic to the type adapter. But that's something, Christian, maybe you can figure out more as you try this.
I mean, at this point, my inclination is to believe that if we're trying to move ahead with using the sync adapter for more and more things, that it seems better to not get daemon sets in immediately, but have it be built well than to build it one way to get it in quickly and then have to rebuild it again later. Because that just increases the amount of time necessary for getting something in one release sooner. Unless there's somebody who's saying like, if Federation does this, then and you'll all get ponies. 1.17 is arbitrary unless there's a reason.
I don't think that there's a huge amount of work, though. I mean, you're talking about replacing the existing daemon set controller with its equivalent and getting integration and UE tests. So the advantage of doing this now is you're not really wasting effort. You're going to build on that when you want to add like rolling update support. And you've already done the work to enable the integrate that faster. And you're going to have to obviously extend it to the testing as well to support rolling update verification. But I think getting it in would be the better idea, and then we can worry about how to evolve it into the next step.
Okay, I agree.
But I just wanted to point that out so that whoever is working on it, make sure that this is something they're taking up. Like they'll have to make sure that the type adapter has and it supports rolling update.
Yeah, I mean, my goal is to get at least preliminary support for every type in this cycle, like having the basic stuff and then extension points. Whether or not all the implementations like are in and ready, that I may not have time to do that, but hopefully the framework's there.
Yeah, Maru, this is Irfan. I was trying to extend that basic sync adapter to another adapter because I was in the process of writing the HPA controller.
Don't do that.
So what I'll do is I'll offline get in touch with you and we'll try to figure out what or how we should place it. Okay.
Yeah, basically the next step is actually rewriting the adapter so it's testable and like. Which to me means that it's modular enough that you can unit test things in isolation. And because things are separable, it should be relatively straightforward to add extension points, to add things like scheduling or rolling update support. But in like just taking the existing sync adapter and trying to do that I don't think that's really a good idea.
What my idea was that any other type can be the extension of the basic sync adapter because all the other controllers do need the basic sync.
Right. But I mean, the goal of extending that is not actually like modifying the adapter, having a custom version of it. It's actually it's configuring it. The goal here is having like a generic framework for synchronization that can be configured with either types or functions to specialize the behavior, but not actually overriding and implementing like a new version of that controller, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I understand that.
Okay, but I'm happy to talk with you about that offline for sure.
Sure.
Okay, so the next item on the agenda was cluster versions queue. And I saw a lot of discussion on the mailing list and on the issues. So I tried to summarize everything that was being discussed. And I saw Quinton replied this morning as well. And I think, yeah, this is something I totally agree with. And I want to make sure like other people agree as well. Like we won't be able to mandate a specific FCP versions because like they can be administered by different people. Someone else is having a federation and the underlying cluster admin doesn't even know that it's part of the federation. And so we cannot even mandate that. So I wanted to make sure like others also agree at least to this part.
Isn't it the responsibility of the federation owner to ensure that the underlying clusters are of particular version?
I think
that's the whole point. So, sorry, is that the clusters themselves could be managed by anybody. And there are many cases where they explicitly will be managed by different parties, different for each cluster and different than the federation control plane. For example, a multinational organization which has regional data centers run by the head of those regional data centers.
Yes.
So hold on. So you're saying that we can't control the version of what exactly?
Of the underlying clusters.
Of the underlying clusters,
Or
not
federation. Like those are managed by different people. So you cannot require that like before updating federation, you have to update the underlying cluster or vice versa. They are maintained by different people.
So you're okay. So you're saying, but are you saying that we can mandate that the federation control plane itself is kept up to date?
Yeah.
We can't mandate that.
Yeah.
Okay,
No, we
so-
can't even mandate that. I
So
mean, the difference is, just to be clear, in a cluster management situation, you have a master and you have nodes, and there's a rule that says the master must be ahead of or equal to the version of the nodes, and that's reasonable in a cluster management scenario because typically you have someone managing the cluster and they can coordinate amongst if there's more than one person they can coordinate, but for multi-clusters, multi-cloud providers, etc., it's just not feasible. One of these clusters may be a GKE cluster, and the other one may be a on-premise or AWS cluster, and you can't go and convince GCE to do a particular upgrade at a particular time to coincide with your requirements.
Yeah, so I'd like that instead of discussing like what requirements we can impose, we decide that we cannot, and instead discuss on what happens if there is a version skew. Like what if a field, like especially the second point here, what happens if a particular field is not supported in the underlying cluster? What should we do there? And I saw like there were proposals that what we do right now is like a best effort, but we can give user a choice that maybe we should generate an error when user submits a replica set. Like the example given was for scheduler name field. If the user submits a replica set with that field set and federation knows that like not all clusters support that field, then it should probably generate an error at that time, or it should do a best effort that for clusters that support that field, it creates a replica set with that field set, and for those that doesn't, it like today it drops them. And if there are other choices,
Yeah, I
we
agree
should.
with your proposal.
do we know how much work this will take? This sounds like this could be a nightmare of matrix cases. Because I have an older cluster that does, I have some version of a cluster that doesn't support something, and I have a bug fix version of a cluster that has a bug in something, so I can't use it.
Yeah.
And the
So
number
if
of cases here seems multitudinous, and like this could just be chasing things all over the place.
So the proposal is not to have like per cluster version logic, but generic logic to determine if a field is supported in each cluster and what to do if that field is not supported. So this would be a generic mechanism for all fields.
No, I really worry that a generic mechanism is going to be hard to maintain in reality across in a production environment. And I base this just on at Google. Basically, what we do is we have like a master that we then say supports the last, I think, two or three revs and versions of the nodes.
Yeah.
And this seems to be a very similar situation. And even doing just that with those constraints, it's created a lot of problems when things fall through the cracks, and generic answers don't always seem to fulfill all of the requirements the customer has for, I just want to have things work. You know what I mean? And suddenly they reveal a lot of complexity that customers may not give a damn about. That's it.
Yeah, I think what Pindan said earlier, in that case, it's all part of a single cluster and there's like one admin managing both of them. So we can have that requirement, which is not possible in Federation.
There's also something worth mentioning here, which is that the two scenarios are quite fundamentally different in the sense that there isn't actually a formal API between the nodes and the master. A lot of the stuff is kind of, well, I guess to a lesser extent there is, but it's a much less strict API versioning than occurs at the cluster API level. So the cluster federation knows that there is a cluster and knows precisely which version the cluster is running, which version of the master, and can then just behave as if it is dealing with a cluster of that version. And we already have backwards compatibility, I believe, so that and this is fundamental to the design of Kubernetes. If you have an old client and you're interacting with a cluster and somebody upgrades the cluster under you, your application has to keep working. That's fundamental to the design of the API of Kubernetes. Whereas that is not the case where if you upgrade a node to a later version than the master, that the master is required to be able to manage that node. That is not a requirement in Kubernetes, and fundamentally different situation. I explained that particularly poorly. I must apologize.
No, I think it's a hard topic to try to cover. In the kubectl case, you're talking about a client that's submitting just kind of a fire and forget type of update. In our scenario, where we have two controllers running potential different versions and trying to sync. I don't know. What comes to mind is like infinite loops and all sorts of nastiness.
Yeah, and some sort of like gigantic testing behemoth where like if we're going to say this is how it works and then we don't test it, well then we can't say that's how it works. I mean, now we have to have tests against like what if you have a 1.5 and 1.4 cluster with replica sets? What if you have a 1.6 and 1.3 cluster with replica
But
sets?
that we already have, like, or at least we do have a roadmap to do that. And I know Shashi has a proposal to add upgrade testing.
But that's not upgrade testing. This is like testing across all existing versions of Kubernetes that we support with all existing versions of the Federation control plane. Like that's what we have to support.
Okay,
because if that's what we say we support and we don't test it, then we don't
Right.
support it.
But that testing doesn't have to be, I need a full cluster. We're just talking about the API here, and that is not actually that hard to validate.
But hold on.
Sorry.
Sorry to kind of interrupt this though, but we're really out of time, and I want to take this opportunity to suggest that we start meeting more often. We still have stuff to talk about, and we don't have any time to talk about it again. Is it possible that we meet every week, at least for the next few weeks, just to hammer out some of this stuff early in the cycle instead of letting it slide?
Yes, I would say yes also because for example, not this Wednesday, next Wednesday is features repo freeze. And I know a few people have some things they intend to have in 1.7 that are not in the features repo. And the powers that be in 1.7 look down on people who don't pay attention to their features repo. So
maybe we need to meet like again this week. I don't know. There seems to be like still important stuff to talk about. I don't necessarily know if we want to leave it till next week.
I seem to remember that we decided, and I might be wrong here, but we decided that on the basis of quite a few of these meetings being cancelled for a variety of reasons, and us regularly running out of time, we decided to have them once a week anyway, or did we not decide that?
I don't think we might have decided it, but it didn't happen, as far as I know.
Yeah, so maybe we execute what we decided, unless I'm misremembering what we decided.
I remember talking about it, but I don't remember explicitly.
So I don't know if it matters how much what we decided before. We're all here now. What do we want to do now? And I
think we want to make once a week.
What we did before either, but if you remember the reasons for what we decided before, cool. Let's talk about them now and figure it out. It does seem like there's a lot to go through.
Every week.
Can we do every week, but can we also meet again this week? Can we find time to try to get through? I mean, I guess my thought is we want to get the sense of all the things that we want to do, and now we actually have to make sure there's going to be features proposed for any of the things that require it before Wednesday, which doesn't suggest meeting next week and having a couple days to scramble and get feedback.
We can do another on Thursday.
Yeah, Thursday 9. Yeah, that's fine.
But just to be clear, is this deadline for next Wednesday, is that having filed a feature request?
That's correct.
As opposed to, okay, so I mean.
Oh, it doesn't have to be merged. Okay, that's.
No, it doesn't have to be merged. It has to use, there's a new template. So just be careful to use the new template.
Okay.
I mean, that seems, all the stuff that we have on the proposal list for 1.7, I believe there are already design proposals and these kinds of things for them. So it's just a case of filing those in the features repo, unless I'm misunderstanding something. And if you don't have a design proposal yet for something or any detail about what you're planning to build for 1.7, it's probably too late for that anyway, which is, I'm guessing, the reason for the Wednesday deadline.
So item 8, beyond annotations, I'd like to at least have people talk about that. I know that I haven't done a good job in that document of really laying everything out in a cohesive way, so maybe I can do some work on that. But I really don't think we can continue to just say, oh yeah, we're just going to use annotations for things like policy. I think we at least need to consider alternatives or potential future paths. And if there is something that we can do in 1.7, ideally we would get to work on that rather than just kicking down the can further down the road. And maybe my concern's overblown, and maybe I'd be happy to be told that, but I think ignoring it, that isn't a good strategy.
So I guess at this point, at least for like we agree that we should have at least one more meeting.
Yeah.
So the point is maybe this week Thursday or next week Monday, same time. What time works better for everyone?
I think Maru was saying about Thursday next Monday.
That might be too much. Sorry, I don't need to impose my. I want to talk about this stuff, but whatever works for everybody else.
I'd like to meet on Thursday as well, but I'm on a flight until 10, so I could meet at 10.
It's a community meeting though.
Yeah.
Maybe, yeah. So maybe Monday. Maybe it'll have to be Monday.
Yeah, Monday works well for me.
Yeah.
Okay, I guess Monday already works for everyone. So let's decide Monday.
I mean, I guess if there's anything that's really pressing, we can send emails about it to the list and hopefully sync up about things over email that are very important.
Yep.
I guess features maybe is the most important thing. It might be worth doing some, like talking about that a little bit over email if there's things that people want to worry about there, so that we can get started and make sure we have enough time to get things ready for the deadline. Because I think I agree that Monday to Wednesday next week might not be quite enough time to get things out, looked at, ironed out. But I suppose
So we can certainly, we got a bunch of features planned for 1.7, and I don't believe all of them have feature entries in the features repo. So we can just do that today, and that could be completed before Monday. We don't have to wait till Monday before we start that.
Okay.
And do all of the features have both developers and kind of reviewers associated with them too?
Yeah, it's basically transferring what's currently in the spreadsheet into features repo, I believe.
Yeah.
I do see there are some features where reviewer is not assigned.
Yeah, and we'll have to figure that out before Monday or on Monday.
All right. Yeah, I think that's the only thing. I know that sometimes features end up in the features repo, and then there's no bandwidth to review them, and then that becomes a problem later on.
Yeah.
Cool.
All right.
All right.
See you everyone on Monday.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks everyone. Bye-bye.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye-bye.